Good morning. I'm Nolan Bowerly, the host of The Breakup. The sun is in, as you've seen. I checked. Bitcoin is running. We're all good, ready to go. Let me have my coffee. We'll talk about the news. Perfect way to get started talking about the news. So, let me test this mic though for a second. It is a new mic. I want to make sure everything's good. Looks good. We got a new mic today. Hopefully it's good. So, although this season just launched, we've only had a few episodes this season. We found a big fan already. Trevor Noah clearly watches the show. I talked about him the other day on the show, gave him a bit of advice, said, you're missing some jokes, didn't see a highlight reel of your career. I finally saw one yesterday. It wasn't his career, but he stole the joke that I said on the show. He sent around a clip of Kamala Harris interspersed with Julia Louis-Dreyfus from The Veep. And if you remember, the same episode where I discussed Trevor Noah, I made that joke. I said, look, The Veep is probably the most accurate political show that ever existed. It really is. As someone who worked in the highest levels of politics in a G7 country, I'll tell you it was the most accurate thing I've ever seen. And in that administration that I worked with, we had connections to the Obama administration. And, I'll tell you across the board, Veep works. It's more accurate than any other show. At the time that House of Cards show came out, I couldn't watch it. It was impossible for me to watch. Absolutely impossible. It made no sense. No one acts like that. It was a bunch of bumbling fools. And that's the better way to interpret it. So Trevor Noah, real smart. And if you need to keep stealing jokes here, we got a lot. I know you get paid a lot to be a comedian, but we got some pretty good jokes here when we start. So in other news, Kim and Kanye were both in the news yesterday. Kim, for something that I don't know if we can all agree with or disagree with. Something I don't understand. So Kim Kardashian had to pay a fine yesterday from the SEC for Ethereum Max, right? She had to pay for promoting securities. And, I've seen this tension on Twitter where other crypto bros are telling Bitcoiners, what are you doing, hoping for SEC enforcement? And some Bitcoiners saying, oh, but the SEC said. One thing I got to say, and this happened a few weeks ago, months ago now maybe, I don't remember exactly when, but I did see it. It was a court in the United States that ruled that all SEC judicial action, all SEC enforcement action is actually unconstitutional and should be forgotten about. And I've thought that for a long time. I've been a proponent of that idea that you can't actually put a judiciary inside of a bureaucracy because you have to have the separation of powers, right? You can't have judiciary that's just civil servants. The reason I would have a perspective on that, coming from Canada, we have to learn both Napoleonic Code, civil law, and common law. So it would be a bit like a Louisiana citizen in the United States, where they still learn the Napoleonic Code for their own state as far as states' rights and state commercial law enactment. So they have knowledge of all that stuff. So one thing I always admired about the common law system was that there was this separation, because in the civil law, it's impossible. The judges get that job out of school. The school I went to in France, a lot of people would go to their first job after that school, and it would be to be a judge, like an actual, you don't have to be a lawyer. There was no promotions. There was nothing like that. You just trained to be a judge, and that was a job. And you were a function of the state. So there was no separating the state from the judiciary the way we would have division of powers in the common law system. So I always thought that was a weakness of the SEC, and that it eventually could be challenged at a constitutional level, and it was. So a message that I think all Bitcoiners should keep in mind is that when we do talk about the SEC, it's not about, oh, they should enforce this or they should enforce that. They shouldn't be enforcing anything. They shouldn't even exist, right? You should send all this stuff to the civil courts. The reason is, and the judgment even went into it, what happens is if you have highly specialized bureaucrats that are also adjudicators and acting as judges, they'll actually spin the law to be so complicated because, it's an inside baseball situation. It's not a conspiracy or anything like that. It's just the way things happen. If people become very specialized, they're going to become much more detail-oriented. And you get what you end up having, where when you go to law school, you have this idea of SEC and securities lawyers as kind of like the brain surgeons of law. And it's not because the field is more complicated or sorry, the field is difficult in itself. It's because the field has become more complex because of the rules. And the rules change all the time. They're almost impossible to read. Even if you're trained in the law, the securities regulations are very hard to follow when there's been an amendment, a change, all that kind of stuff. It's nearly impossible. You have to know it. And very hard barrier, very difficult barrier to entry. So remember, I don't think they should even be in the game, and American courts agree with it. And I think that's going to continue that whole process. So maybe one day we'll actually lose the SEC enforcement branch because of this, which is all something that we're hoping for. So that's Kim. Kanye set the world on fire yesterday. He wore a White Lives Matter t-shirt. And of course, people can't handle it. They went crazy, crazy, crazy. But what I got to say is, when are we going to start talking about Orange Lives Matter? And that's what this show is really all about. We've got a whole plan on how to talk about how Orange Lives matter the most, I think, and we'll get to it. But first, I want to, whenever I hear Kanye's name, I have to put it out there, because as someone who produces events, I help produce the Bitcoin Magazine event. I help produce Consensus. I've produced Consensus for years, the CoinDesk event. I have a very small role in that these days, but I used to be, heavily involved in it. So I just put it out there every time. I have to say it out loud to try and make it happen one day. And it's this: my ideal Bitcoin event, the one I am desperately trying to produce. And I think I'm going to get it. My thought is I can get it done by the presidential elections. I have a feeling Bitcoin is going to be, top of the ticket as far as debate, and every candidate's going to have some thought on it for the next presidential. If it's the two geriatric people again, the old ones that went last time, maybe not. But I do, if we get some young people like Kanye, right? I think Kanye could be the president of the United States. I would support him 100%. And I do support Kanye 2024, just so everyone knows. There's a few other people that I support, but Kanye 2024 is on my list. So here's the event I want to produce. And if it's not 2024, anytime we can do it. I want to do a Bitcoin event on Jekyll Island. Do you know where Jekyll Island is? You know what it is? Jekyll Island is the island where the Federal Reserve was actually created. It's off the coast of Savannah in Georgia. And it's where the robber barons went and came up with the plan for the bank trust. And from then on, there's all kinds of stories about this place. Please read the book Creature from Jekyll Island. Really dark, occulty stuff going on this island. And what I want to do is have a Bitcoin event there to sanctify it. And the keynote is going to be Kanye West. We're going to have Kanye West as a keynote at this event in Jekyll Island. Then just so you know, the event is not produced. I do not rent anything yet. Kanye is not confirmed, but it's the vision that I have, and it's the event I want to produce, and it's going to happen. So one day you're going to see an event on Bitcoin where we're going to re-sanctify Jekyll Island, make it beautiful again, exorcise the occult dollar birthing that happened there, and really plant a flag for Bitcoin. So good job, Kanye. I'm glad you made it into the news with what you did, and remind us all that all kinds of colored lives matter, right? And that doesn't mean all lives matter or anything, but we're going to get to Orange Lives Matter in a second, because that will be the board today. Why Orange Lives Matter. Really important. I also want to mention, and this was just a crazy story, the Kyrie Irving thing. So Kyrie Irving, a few days ago, retweeted Alex Jones. Now, I love Alex Jones the way I love or loved wrestling. It's entertainment, right? And he says a lot of things that light your brain on fire. He's a heck of a good time to watch and be entertained by. And he brings up challenging points of view. And the whole meme situation of Alex Jones was right. Alex Jones tried to warn us is a lot of fun, right? Because we like to do predictions on the show. He did a lot of predictions on his show. And when you get a prediction right, you got to talk about it. Now, I totally get that he's entertainment. I think even in his defense, when it came to the Sandy Hook thing, he tried to say that. He tried to use the, what's her name from MSNBC, the lady. She's the host of the news show. She just quit, or saying she was host of the MSNBC show. I never watch it. She had short hair. Super smart. She went to all these Ivy League schools, really, really smart. But anyway, the point is, she actually used this defense before, where she was being sued for libel or slander, and she said, no, you can't take me seriously. I'm not really a journalist. I'm just an entertainer. And I think a lot of people said, okay, that's fine. We actually don't treat you seriously and couldn't take anything you say seriously. And it is entertainment, and therefore I see why it's a defense. And it worked for her. It didn't work for Alex Jones in this case, but a lot of people think it should have. So how do we get from Kanye West's Orange Lives Matter to where we're headed today? How do we show this Orange Lives Matter piece on the board? Well, it starts with Elon Musk. Elon Musk yesterday tried to make a proposal to the Ukraine situation. And I'll read what he said. Ukraine-Russia peace. Redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves if that is the will of the people. So UN-supervised elections in the annexed regions, Donbass and all that. Russia leaves if that is the will of the people. Crimea, formerly part of Russia, as it has been since 1783, parentheses, until Khrushchev's mistake. Next point, water supply to Crimea assured. Next point, Ukraine remains neutral. He followed that tweet with, this is highly likely to be the outcome in the end. It's a question of how many die before then. Now, it's a pretty reasonable point of view. I could see why 1 point or 2 don't really fit. But the point at the end that he makes, this is highly likely to be the outcome in the end. Just a question of how many die before. So what he's saying is, put your egos down. It's going to end up like this. Stop worrying about all these little things. So it's a fair enough point, right? Fair enough point. What was the reaction to that? It ends up being an IQ test of sorts, because people lost their mind. They lost it the same way they lost it to Kanye West yesterday, the same way they're losing it to Kyrie Irving. And remember, Kyrie Irving retweeted the Alex Jones things. They want to cancel him altogether. No sponsorships, nothing. Get rid of him. They said it's worse than his COVID stance. It's worse than his COVID stance, retweeting Alex Jones. So these reactions, how do people even get to these reactions? You got people saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Stick to cars, stick to satellites, stick to space. Here's the thing, and I think Elon is touching on this. Basically, Putin needs an off-ramp. He needs an exit plan. And every one of these reactions to the comment is, no, you've got to go further. He's got to learn his lesson. He can never do this again. Ukraine liberates all sovereign territory. Russia decolonizes, denuclearizes, and gives up everything. So the argument is he should just give up. And not only that, bleed on some altar and say he's sorry forever. I mean, that was mostly the take that you had out there. This is stupid because Putin isn't punished enough, right? Now, maybe he should be punished more. I don't think that's the point, though. The point is, how do we end it? And sometimes you have to put your ego down. Sometimes you have to do things that, you wouldn't think are perfect, but at least they save lives. And in this case, at least they create a situation where we can move on, and creates a situation where Putin can get out of it. Right? You've got to give an exit strategy. If you don't give an exit strategy, you're forcing the person to keep their finger on the nuclear button. And that's a big problem, right? By making it the focus to not give an exit strategy, you're actively increasing the risks. I understand why the United States military forces would take that opportunity now. I think they do think they can remove Putin and provide a kill shot. But there's still so much uncertainty between ending it. And if they're right in the end, if he just gives up and they kill him, or they go peacefully, and then they're arrested, Putin and his friends, and then Russia turns over, I'm 100% wrong here, right? Then they had the right strategy. And they might actually have the wrong strategy. So I'm not saying that, I'm not arguing that Elon Musk's strategy is the absolute right strategy. It sounds reasonable and sounds great. The reactions to it, you had people in Ukraine, government officials, Ukraine's ambassador lashes out at Elon Musk's peace proposal, telling him to fuck off and saying no Ukrainian. Pardon me if you have children in the room. I will normally warn you if I'm going to swear, right? I will normally warn you. So he says, tell him to fuck off and saying no Ukrainian will buy his Tesla crap. So now you can kind of understand how Ukraine itself even found itself in this war, right? You know, this is the guy that gave all those satellites to Ukraine. And you had, you know, Gary Kasparov, the chess guy, you know, criticizing Elon Musk immediately. So Elon says, you know, we gave Starlinks to Ukraine and lost $80 million in doing so, while putting SpaceX and myself at serious risk of Russian cyber attack. What have you done besides tweet? You know, he's very right about that. So what have you done besides tweet? So all of this brings me to the board and what it made me think of. And you have Musk's plan and you have the reaction. The whole thing, Musk's plan and the reactions, end up becoming a kind of IQ test for personal responsibility. And the personal responsibility piece here actually plays into Bitcoiners' favor. And this is why I say orange lives matter in this case. So has anyone ever heard of the Peter Principle? The Peter Principle actually started as a joke to make it popular, which is that you'll get promoted to your level of incompetency, right? It's kind of a joke. Like you'll be so successful until you get to the level where it's clear you're not responsible anymore and not good enough and you can't perform the job. So that concept, the slogan, the saying, the idiom, you'll be promoted to your level of incompetency, is widely repeated in corporate settings. A lot of people think it. But what it actually means is, and so just so you know, the person who invented it was actually a psychologist. And they were constantly dealing with people, a scourge of the modern world, he believed, of people who would come into their job, you know, people who'd come to see him as a psychologist, and they would say, you know, I'm so unhappy in my job, and I can't get anything done, and I don't know who I am and what I'm doing and all this stuff. And this was the thing that he observed. He observed that the corporate ladder, if you will, can put people in a position that they're not good at anymore. And it's not because they lack the skills or anything like that. It's because the job they were at earlier was perfectly suited for them. And although everyone is interested in a promotion, sometimes those promotions are into tasks that they're not good at. So his example was, you know, I had this great mechanic, and the mechanic did everything right for the car. And then one day, he was such a good mechanic that they promoted him to foreman of the garage. So now he was a people manager. Now he was making schedules, which he was terrible at. No good at all. Right? No good at all. So what the Peter Principle really is about is a sort of spiritual and psychological whole that many modern folks in the Western world come to. And it, you know, you can even go to a Jung idea around this. You know, Carl Jung, the psychologist, talked about this, where he was meeting with some, I think Comanche, but you know, one of the tribes that had been pushed already to the West, and were in the West, and they were about to get pushed even further in the 1800s or early 1900s, pardon me. And so Jung said, he went and interviewed some of these folks, and the chieftain said to him, you know, this can't happen. It's a big problem, right? It's my job to see the sun from morning over the horizon, and my children help me. You know, what are we going to do? No one can get on with this sun going down over there, and the whole world could have a lot of trouble. And these were perfectly content people, of course. So Jung wrote it all down, and people kind of laughed. You know, he's moving the sun along. But what Jung observed is that this person had absolutely no anxieties, no psychological afflictions that he was seeing day to day in other places. He was, you know, he had clients, patients that were big travelers and running from place to place. And what he saw was anxious, neurotic people who didn't know their place in the world and were a little bit like a cornered animal running from experience to experience, trying to find a role. And the exact opposite was true. He'd never treated any anxiety, any neuroses, anything like that. There was no shadow being suppressed and trying to emerge in the person's personality. It just didn't happen. And so he had a real, you know, sort of eureka moment around that this ability to personally evolve and find a role was probably the only way to avoid the anxieties, and that the anxieties came from having a life without any meaning, and that doesn't mean doing an important job. I think Elon Musk even tweeted back in August when he was on about the population decline and demographics, saying that motherhood is the most important job in the world. And I tend to agree with that entirely, because you can see the fulfillment, you can see, it's a simple job, but just getting kids through the day is rewarding unto itself and can help you find a place in the world. And even myself as a father, as a stay-at-home father, I get to enjoy this as well. And it definitely does give my life a lot of meaning, and a lot of, it just simplifies things. So all of that to say, within the Peter Principle, right, what we have is the corporate structure, which is really inefficient at promoting people, because what happens is it doesn't actually look at the main factors that will help you get promoted. And I've listed those as sort of, you have a good network, you're able to network, you're personable, likable. Those are the glasses, if my drawing's no good, the glasses that fall, in those videos or memes. So, being likable is another way to get promoted. Putting yourself in the right place for opportunities, following opportunities. I went to New York City when Bitcoin was sort of starting there, and very easy to find opportunities in early Bitcoin in New York City, even though it was illegal. People were trading it. So it was follow the opportunities and you'll make. And the last one is potential, right? So what's the potential of the person at the next level? That is hardly ever even measured in corporate promotions. So the main difference that I see is that corporations, being driven by these dollars, right, have actually reached their, and with dollars as the motivation and all that, have actually reached their level of incompetency in the modern world. While the corporate structure plus US dollars were great for societal promotion in the previous era, we can't deny what the US dollar and fiat currencies have provided since World War II in terms of quality of life for certain people, overall caloric intake of human beings, birth rates, destroying diseases, getting rid of, as much as we could of famine for that era. There's a cap. Right? Just like there's a cap on individuals when they go to work and they get promoted to a level of incompetency. As a society now, with media, without any understanding of personal responsibility versus corporate responsibility, making these takes. If you look at, and this is why I say it's an IQ test, if you look at what Elon Musk did, you can agree or disagree, but the laughing, the mocking, the anger, where does that come from? Right? Where does it come from? I think it's because you've realized, subconsciously anyway, that you're at the end of the line here. You're like one of those people, that neurotic traveling woman that Jung had as a client, looking at the native who's without anxiety, happy, just trying to solve the problem of the sun landing on the other side every day. But there's meaning in that. And the reaction to it looks kind of the same, because you remember everyone laughed at these. What are you talking about? You're shepherding a son, you primitive moron, right? Why don't you go travel and learn about science and other stuff like that and be a civilized modern person? So the reason the Orange Lives part is important is because while there is, a failure to have promotions in a way that leaves us spiritually fulfilled, and almost always ends in incompetence. Almost always. There's almost no case where that doesn't happen in the corporate structure as it is today. There are exceptions, and I'm sure there have been over time. Some people are great CEOs. They were much better CEO than they would have been as a salesperson, and they don't find their competency until they get into those positions. So that happens, but it's kind of luck, because promotions are mostly done by seniority. These factors can play a role, networking, likability, they're all there, but they're just in the mix. Seniority and these other factors within the corporate structure just pay way more. And the main difference then becomes that same IQ test that we saw with the media and its take on Elon Musk. There's folks who just think that he's not talented enough, I guess you could say. He doesn't have the credentials to offer this solution. So he's criticized, right? He's missing the sort of promotion to that level. But Bitcoiners know that responsibility is not organizational, right? It's not like in the case of it's not like in the case of Elon Musk, where he's being criticized because he didn't fulfill the criteria of a college degree in geopolitics in order to have the credibility to give an opinion on this. We know in Bitcoin that responsibility is actually personal. And when you start seeing responsibility as not corporate, not societal, you even look at we talked about Hollywood yesterday. It's the same example. You got this new movie. I guess it's a rom-com with two men. It's a homosexual rom-com. I was a huge fan 20 years ago of The Birdcage. A huge fan. It was hilarious, the Robin Williams movie. I saw the original French version, La Cage aux Folles, the Cage of Crazies, and this was a popular movie. So the movie didn't do very well, it turns out, at the box office this weekend. Both the star of the movie, who also was the writer, as well as the studio, already weeks ago said, if you were a MAGA Republican, we don't want you at the movie. Now, the movie bombed. It bombed this week. So who do they go and blame? Well, it's your fault. It's your fault that the movie didn't do well, right? Even though all the people who came to Birdcage 20 years ago probably would have came to this movie as well. I would have had no problem seeing that movie until I heard from the director and writer that actually half of America is not welcome. And then they wonder why the movie doesn't do well. So they're on Twitter yesterday complaining, oh, it's homophobia. That's what kept the movie back. People don't want to see it. I mean, in the end, you're just passing responsibility to anyone in the room, right? Maybe the movie was just bad. I don't know. I barely watch movies anymore, not because I don't like this movie or that movie. I don't have the attention span. I can't sit there for 2 hours and watch a movie. I'm incapable. I'm literally incapable of watching a movie now. I try. I can't get to the end. I'm on to other things. There's stuff happening in the world. All the stakes, I guess you could say, in movies are just in sports too. The drama just isn't there anymore. The drama seems to be in the real world, and we're obsessed with Bitcoin. So there's always stuff to do when Bitcoin's involved. So the point is that orange lives matter. Orange lives matter for this reason. Because Bitcoiners are so keyed in on personal responsibility versus societal responsibility. And this Peter principle, this you will rise to your level of incompetence, is actually now treated in its real form, right? That you will find a path, and if you fail, right, you will be in a place where you're not competent. But orange lives matter for this reason. I think we're alchemists. I think we're alchemists. What does that mean? Well, alchemists, if you go back to the actual history of alchemy, it had nothing to do with turning metal into gold or whatever kind of steel, iron into gold, right? Isaac Newton and all these other alchemists only said that in order to get the scent off of them for what they were really doing. What they were really doing was exploring their own blood, their own energy. And by that I mean that an alchemist is actually just about following their intuition, literally getting personally promoted, right? Having, a better lifestyle, more or less, having a better lifestyle. What alchemists end up doing is they try to turn what they touch into gold. And by that, it means follow your energy, find your destiny, and create gold on earth from your experience. They literally want their blood to become like electrified by excitement and things that have them interested. Not promotion at all, right? Personal evolution. Personal evolution, the ability to concentrate more, the ability to produce more, the ability to basically find your destiny is what alchemists were really interested in. And I would argue that Bitcoiners, as they get interested in purifying their blood, with good dieting, right? By purifying your blood, you're trying to get out the seed oils, for example, from your blood. You're trying to get out any unhealthy toxins that might have entered your body. You're trying to definitely get rid of alcohol, for example, right? How many Bitcoiners just don't even touch alcohol? Not even near, not out of like, oh, I was, it's not the same like PTSD that alcoholics have. Alcoholics hate alcohol. Like they can't be around it. Reformed alcoholics, and I understand why, right? I've met many reformed alcoholics in my life that cannot be around it. They understand the dangers and are on guard all the time against alcohol. But the people that I've met in Bitcoin that have eschewed alcohol, it's more just because it's boring and prevents them from personally evolving. That's it, right? It's just, oh, well, it doesn't really work, so you can drink, but, for me, not going to work. Now, Bitcoiners drink here and there. I've seen it, right? But it's not a common thing. It's not. And I know more Bitcoiners that have actually stopped drinking altogether. No booze whatsoever, not even in a social situation. Nothing. Very common, right? And that's the alchemy piece. It's the alchemy piece. And when you look at all of these networking, being likable, opportunities, potential, you start to see that the Peter principle applied to Bitcoiners actually means that we can start growing further than the corporate model. We can actually surpass it. Just as the corporate model has actually itself risen to its level of competency, Bitcoiners, being driven by this alchemical motivation to be a better person and to take more personal responsibility, even more personal responsibility in order to evolve, is actually the path we can take to win, right? And if you look at all of these factors, networking, right away, Bitcoiners, I mean, it is a network, right? What about likability, right? Do people like the dollar and banks? I don't think so, right? Bitcoiners just in general already have a reputation and an identity that's much more helpful and likable. What about opportunity? Well, I mean, Bitcoin is just starting. It's just getting going in energy. There's a million ways the thing can change the world. And when we talk about energy, following energy, just like I followed Bitcoin to New York in the early days, and I was in Toronto in the early days as well, and saw a lot of stuff there, right? But I chose from Toronto from the earliest days to move to New York to be even closer to energy and the activity around Bitcoin. And then potential. Of course, the potential of Bitcoin goes right to that spiritual level that we're talking about. It is that alchemical thing. It is the ability to, basically get rid of organizational promotion as the main driving force in our economy and replace it with personal responsibility being the main driving force in our economy, and increasing that personal responsibility and getting promotions in your own personal responsibility. And that's the contrast I see, right? The dollar is wedded to corporate promotions. That's the point. You get a corporate promotion to get more money, which is seemingly the point of all these jobs. And the fellow who wrote the Peter Principle, that's just like Jung as a psychologist. Those were the people he was meeting, day in and day out. An epidemic of people without a role, without a place in the world, without an understanding of their contribution, with this knowledge that they are just a small little cog in a huge machine. And if they went away tomorrow, no one would notice, right? If they went away tomorrow, nobody would notice. And Bitcoiners, it's not a legacy or ego thing. It literally is just how do I get to the next level? How do I grow a little more? How do I have more personal responsibility in my banking, in my financial health, and more in your diet health, in your physical health, right? There's such a huge importance in Bitcoin on lifting weights and being physically fit, and really important. The worst thing you can be in Bitcoin is like skinny fat, right? And we never fat shame on this show, ever. We're not interested in fat shaming. We understand that, the operating system is to be addicted to stuff. We're all addicts, all of us, whether you've been traumatized or not. You just choose terrible things if you've been traumatized, and you get addicted to awful things. But we are a reward-based entities, right? We do things that cause us pleasure, and we want to do them more, and we avoid things that cause us some types of pain, right? And we get addicted, and that's just how it works. And you can get addicted to good things, right? We can get addicted to good things. You know, I'm gonna have a fresh coffee right after this show, and I give that to myself every single time. And I know when I'm done, I get a nice fresh hot coffee, right? You can train yourself like a dog. Everyone can, and it's really helpful. So the difference here is this structure, motivated by dollars, just like the Peter Principle said, has risen to its level of incompetency. It can't provide any more answers. And that's where the personal responsibility thing comes in. Because just look at the Elon Musk situation. You've got all these know-it-alls, all the know-it-alls, all of them. The know-it-alls in America, the know-it-alls in Ukraine, the know-it-alls in Europe, laughing at the only one person who's doing something on their own to make this better. They could be wrong. It doesn't matter. Elon Musk, like Bitcoiners, is an alchemist. More personal responsibility, the better. The more they can influence the world through their own, literally promoting themselves, right? He's a promoter, and he's been promoted. He's a promoter. Remember, do you know how much money his company spend on advertising? They don't have any. Advertising is a scam. It's a scam business. All advertising does is advertise to your bosses. Anyone in marketing is really just, wanting to please their bosses. How much the message spreads in the market is, almost none. Only ads that work are the really clever ones, the FTX ones at the Super Bowl, with the guy from Simon, Larry David. That's great. Some ads can work. Some ads can work, but 99% waste of time, total waste of time. And Elon Musk knows that. Elon Musk spends $0 advertising his companies, never, because he's the promoter. He is the promoter. And as he is the promoter, he understands promotion, getting promoted, promoting himself, right? Literally promoting himself to maybe the most important person in the world. And, he's a Bitcoiner, loves the Dogecoin. We can forgive him that. I mentioned a little bit about the SEC. I don't mind anyone who wants to fight the SEC, and if they use Dogecoin to fight the SEC, I'm pretty much for it, right? I don't really care. So there you go, right? We've got a whole level of competency that we haven't reached yet. And I think as Bitcoiners are alchemists, we're bound to be successful. Some of us will be, and we're going to make a better world. All right, let's try and see the comments here. Today, I am on a different, here we go. New mic sounds better. Good. Yeah, good. Can't invent Kanye. I'd vote for him too if he lived in the US, Huru says. Yeah, I would. I think, let's see, we should stop giving Ukraine all this free publicity. Yeah. Huru, alchemy is the study of melanin, still is. If what you're saying, which coincidentally is the real gold, yeah. That's my understanding of alchemy. That it was hidden. The true meaning was hidden. If melanin, if by melanin you mean you will have a nice skin tone if you're healthy, and you keep your internal systems energetic, then yeah, I think that's what it is. That's my understanding. That's my understanding. And exactly, it is the real gold. If you through your thoughts and abilities, like, can Elon Musk just go like this and create like a gold statue? I think so. He's the richest man in the world, right? He can manifest almost anything on earth that he has in his mind or heart or whatever. It shouldn't be too much trouble. Yeah, okay. Oh, so Huru says melanin and melanocytes are not exactly, the skin color piece is not, I was wrong. Yeah. But he does say, right, it demands truth in all ways. Look, I mean, it's the frame I've stumbled upon for a while, that Bitcoiners are alchemists, maybe without even knowing it. I try to like subtly program that into events. That's why I do put a focus when I'm programming a Bitcoin show on lifestyle, on health, on personal health. I think it's real important, right? And Desakota says, very interesting content. Love the contrast between corporate promotion culture and the Bitcoin alternative. I'll take door number 2. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? It's the contrast of the corporate promotion culture, which is the driving force right now in our entire economy, right? And when the Peter Principle was invented, like I said, it was to make a bit of a joke that you'll be, promoted to your level of incompetency. What he was actually saying is, it's inevitable. The system is poorly designed and will put you in a level of incompetency, and there you will die, or you will fade, and you will wilt, and you will, become slow and useless. And the alchemists, of course, it's just, they don't wait for the memo on what to do next. Nobody knows. Everyone, as an alchemist, is on their own, choose your own adventure here. There's no right answer or wrong answer. It's literally do your best, get up every day, manage your shadow, deal with your problems, put them all out there for you to deal with, and try to evolve in areas that you're weak. It never ends. I think the Bible was clear about it, right? It says, you'll be scratching and clawing for your life, your whole life. And that doesn't mean there's no moments of respite and joy and all that. It just means it's a challenge. The minute you're done, a new one starts. My whole life is that way. I mean, the minute you think you're out of the woods, another thing starts. And as long as you don't let it, as long as you can still see a path out, and you start iterating on plans and what you need to do to get out of that, it's usually always something good for you, right? It's usually always something you needed inside of you anyway. So that's the name of the game, guys. We're alchemists, right? All right, team. That's all I got for today. I hope it was a good one. Fair Trade Trouser says, thanks for the show. Keep it going. Yeah, it's a good addiction. Yeah, that's the goal here, right? Get addicted to Bitcoin. Get addicted to good, wholesome Bitcoin content, and making it, creating it, consuming it, and you'll be better off. It happened to me. Bitcoin provided the parachute. This is from Desakota again. Bitcoin provided the parachute out of the corporate death trap. Still work, but I only work so I don't need to spend Bitcoin. Yeah, I think a lot of people, I was a little lucky, I guess, in my alchemical path. When I got out of law school, I did a year in Japan at a firm, but my first job was in the Senate Banking Committee thing, and which was a big luck for me, because my whole time in college I've worked in every crazy job you can imagine. I worked in every restaurant, every kitchen, everything, right? Had to do that for years, which I loved. It was great, right? I have nothing but good memories. But I got this great job in the Senate after, and already I didn't have. They just treated me in a way that I think a lot of people would have been super appreciative of. I didn't have office hours. I was able to, I got the Bitcoin study going in 2013 because of the amount of trust and faith they had in me at the time, to be able to do this stuff. I said, this Bitcoin thing is real, guys. It's coming, and it's going to change the whole world. And they were like, oh, really? Great. Okay, let's do it. So I didn't have to get the corporate, and then I just, that was a corporate job. I had a secretary and a fireplace in my office right in the main Parliament building in Canada. But I, gone. I worked above a pizzeria after that, because it was the only Bitcoin ATM in Toronto, and it was like a Bitcoin co-working space where Ethereum was invented. Literally, Vitalik, who used to write Bitcoin magazine articles in that co-work space, met him a bunch of times there. I asked him, the first question I ever asked him, what with the yellow paper, the Ethereum yellow paper, like in my hand, I was like, who's going to mine this fucking thing? And he was right. He said, they're just going to mine it. They're just going to mine it. I didn't believe anyone would even show up to mine it. I was wrong then. People definitely showed up to mine it. So, but I guess they're all gone now. You can't mine it the way you used to. All right, team. We'll be back tomorrow.